Hi, welcome to uh, my live demonstration this morning. I'm Elaine M. Bergstrom, and let's see, it seems like it's a little delayed. So maybe this is a better screen. Um, this is Elaine M. Bergstrom, an artist perspective. You can find me on obviously Facebook or recordings on YouTube. So one of the classes I really love to teach is using 6 tubes of watercolors, only 6 tubes. Behind me, you can see through the years how many different tubes of paint I purchased. And you no longer need to do this. You can save money. You can get all the colors that you want and be able to mix them, glaze them, and start saving money. It actually teaches you a lot more about how to paint by using a limited palette. So in this little dish, I put out my 6 colors. I've done quite a few videos using them. So what's important is that you're using 3 primaries, but they have different undertones, or what we call biases. So if you look at this yellow, it's what we call a cooler yellow. It's more lemony. This one's more golden and warmer. It's closer to the reds, where the yellow actually has more like blue green undertones in it. And then the cool blue is here, which I like, the phthalo or the phthalo family, and ultramarine. And then my reds, this is my warm red, it's cat red light, and then a quin rose. So a lot of artists talk about the primaries being cyan, magenta, and yellow. And then when you add the other 3 primaries, you can get all of these colors behind me. So I just grabbed, um, this was some kind of pretty berry flower that came out of a floral bouquet at the grocery store. So when I first look at it, I look at, and it's actually hard for me to see. I might use like magnifying glasses for myself, but you always want to locate the lightest and go to the dark. So there's quite a range of color. So towards the bottom of the berry, I see some light. So what I basically would do is maybe just leave that little bottom on the reddish tone ones. The berry tone, purple black, blue black. You don't really see it, but there's one underneath, but it's not as predominant on there. And so I look at it, and I always teach in class, start with the lightest color. So I'm not really seeing any, predominant yellow. It's kind of a little green on the bottom. So I could start in that area with a yellow, but when you're glazing, you're putting light layers of wash. So you always want to kind of wet it a little bit first, even though these are very small. And sometimes when I work small, I mix paints too. So this could be kind of like a little bit of an olive green under there, but I think I'm going to wait. And then I look, let me just grab this. You could take a magnifying glass, and you can look at to see the colors. So this one, actually, I don't know where I found it, but I don't know if you could even see that, but it is a light yellowish green. I don't really see too much orange or yellow in the top of the berry, but it goes from, maybe some warm red to the Queen Rose Magenta, and then on the edge, there's almost like a dark purple. So let's start there. So I'm going to start with the upper variant, see how far we get. So I'm seeing it's definitely more of the magenta red versus the cad red, light red. I've sprayed, I always start activating my watercolors with a couple spritzes. You can see this one needs it. This one's out of the manganese family. It's manganese hue blue. I've been playing with it, but if you have phthalo blue or it's one of the Windsor green maybe, it's all in the same family. Okay, so a very light tone. This is too big of a brush for such a small area. And these happen to be like the 8404s, Raphael Sables, just a different label. Very light coats usually. And I'm going to, so that one has a little bit too much paint to start with for me. If I was glazing and adding a lot of colors going from, yellow, orange to blue, I'd want them to be lighter so that each layer would show more of the colors. And I'm going to give this one also, this is going to be almost the black one. It's like purple, black, blue, black. You can create blacks in several different ways. So with glazing, you would let those dry completely before adding another layer. So let me get my magnifying glass again. And maybe what I could do is post a close-up of it so you can see it. There is a little bit of cad red light. It's still wet. One way is just to let it dry. Another way is to blow dry it. So it shouldn't be rushing, because if it's still wet, then we call it a wet on wet, where we're adding more water, more paint into the item. So just because we're a little pressed for time. And the cad red light is a really much stronger. So I just took some of the paint off. You can always check it a little bit. But I'm going to add a little bit of that towards the bottom. So it's still wet. So ideally, if it's completely dry, you add a clear layer of water. Yes, you reactivate it, but the layer underneath will not blend, it will not merge, and you start getting these different tones underneath. And then what I need to do is create some red violets, go a little bit deeper up here, and then probably purples. So I do have my mixing tray, and one of the drawbacks to this little guy is that there's no place to mix. So we'll mix over here and hopefully you can see it. So I know that if I take my ultramarine blue and my Queen Rose, I usually get a pretty nice purple, but this is leaning a little bit more towards the red violets, so a little bit more of the cooler tone. So I'm just gonna, that might be too much. Okay, we'll start with that. So you can feel it, it's almost dry. So I'm gonna clean my brush, add a drop of clean water on top. And then depending on the shading and the light, there might be a little highlights up on top. I can maybe lift those out in a little bit, but hopefully you'll be able to see. Let's get some of the water out. It's still wet. Here we go. So we can start seeing the variation of color. And this one's going to go so dark, so it doesn't really matter. So one of the ways to make black, I never let students use black. You can add black to a color as one way, but it just goes flat if you don't mix it. So you can take your three primaries and get really dark colors. You can also take Payne's gray and make burnt sienna and Payne's gray and mix it. So what I normally do is I would start with yellow, red, and blue, and obviously less yellow, more red and blue, probably the most blue. So if I wanted to go more purple, then I would, let's just add and keep adding some blue so we get it much darker. And let's go over that a little bit. So it starts looking more blue, but we'll let that kind of dry a little bit, leaving a little spot on the top. And then the glazing part would be to, when this dries, is add even more of this red violet to it. You can start seeing, even though it's a very tiny specimen, I wasn't thinking about that when I chose it, that you can start seeing it. Now, while the paint is wet, I can lift. And you can take a paper towel and lift too, but make sure you clean your brush. But in order to keep that little bitty highlight, that's there. So I need a little bit, I think we need to go a little bit darker. It's pulling, so let's get a combo here. And what's nice is if you have a brush with a really nice point, you notice I'm not really switching. Okay, it's still wet, unfortunately. Just trying to add layers. Notice I'm not mixing colors. I'm applying the colors one on top. Now, it is a little wet on wet, but glazing should be completely dry each layer, maybe work on another project while you're doing it so that you can get the full effect of what's going on. So let's take some ultramarine blue and some cad red light. And that will give me, too much cad red light. So I'll need a lot more blue there. And you can see it gives me a really dark Payne's gray. So I want to add a little red to this, and you can kind of start getting some variations of color. And you can see it got dark. And without going into detail, what I like is I can see the undertone in it coming through the highlight just a little bit. Now on these, I think they're berries. I don't know if they're think they're very, I'm just putting that dark mix a little bit on top. But you can see it's puddling. And when it does that, it's basically still wet. Nice if you're making a texture. There we go. And it's almost like a dark, pretty dark green. Let's see. So I think what's really good is with a magnifying glass is you can start to see what that eye isn't showing you. So let's get a little bit warmer green. So I'm going to take my warm yellow, which is more golden looking. And I take my ultramarine blue. So if you've ever mixed colors, sometimes you probably wondered why you couldn't get that bright green, and then it has to do with the undertones of the yellow and the blue. So I teach a lot more about that in classes so that you can understand. So I'm just putting in a little bit of that olive green underneath that I saw on the bottom. And I'm going to go back to this, and just so you can see it, I'm going to just put a light coat for the branch. And then, of course, I would build up a little bit. And then these dried up leaves, probably sepals underneath, just indicate those right now. And for me, you know, if I was sketching in my sketchbook like this and just painting, this is definitely fine. If I was doing a more refined painting, it would be drawn and much clearer, and then, you know, I'd really wait for it. So I'm kind of losing some of that reddish tone. So I'm going to go back to my cat red light. And with a very thin glaze, I'm going to just kind of go over that, and look at that. It just kind of popped that berry a little bit. So let's see if I can maybe zoom in just a little bit more so you can see. Probably still hard to see, but I hope that's helpful for you to see a little bit about glazing and how I mixed using the 6 colors. You know, I think it's important to be able to first mix whatever color that you want. So that would probably be the first thing I'd practice, and then just have fun. Maybe use something a little bigger as your specimen and look for the lightest color. Really look, because you sometimes have to really look to see the colors, and you start from obviously yellow, orange, red, red, orange, red, violet, violet, blue, violet, and you keep building till you get darker. And if you have highlights like I did, while the paint is wet, just lift it up with your brush. Sometimes you have to wipe and lift a few times. And there's also a lot of other great tools that we use to lift out paint, because we like to save the white of the paper rather than using an opaque white. And I think right down this middle we can lift. Well, I'll post this little picture and maybe a photograph of this, and I hope it helps. If you've enjoyed the video, of course, I'd like you to like it and subscribe or follow me, and let me know if there's anything you'd like to see. Have a great week. Thank you.